Knowing synthesizers and music production is the craft, but what you say with it is the art.
Wow. Okay. I'll write that down.
Hi, and welcome to Dr. Mix. I hope you guys are doing all right. Today, I have a very, very special episode for you because we're going to talk about branding musicians, branding people who are in the music game. Let me give you a little bit of perspective here. I have started this website called drmix.com back in 2006. So this is a online mixing, mastering, production. This has been going really, really well for many, many years. Here you got your packages, frequently asked questions about us. So I had a lot of joy with this website. And the concept, initially, is sort of EasyJet, Orange type of stuff. Easy service, easy to use. There are cartoons that explain how to use the service and what the service is about. As I grew, I think that this look is a little bit dated. I mean, I love this little guy, but, I think the brand has moved on. I feel that I have not enough consistency and it's not like a strong statement. If you look also at my digital packages, courses, official guide to mixing, this is a mixing course, house music production, the Thriller sound pack. I mean, there are quite a bit of packages here, but as you can tell, the brand is not really ideal. It's not really consistent, let's say. And also, by this time, my YouTube channel has made its own statement, the studio, the colors. So I thought, you know what? It's time for me to rebrand the Dr. Mix thing. I mean, up to this point, I've done everything by myself, maybe hiring graphic designers, telling them the concept that I wanted, blah, blah, blah. But on this occasion, I thought, hey, why not call in the professionals? So I made a quick Google search. I searched for branding agency, London. I've come across this Firedog. Man, take a look at it. So this is the type of brand that they do. How incredible is that? I mean, this stuff is like professional, right? Firedog website clearly shows really high profile clients. Look at that. Look at that. This is really probably a bit of a stretch for me because I'm not a big company like the ones portrayed in this website. But what I thought is, why don't I get in touch with them and see if they would be up for helping me a little bit with my brand? Maybe we can do a video together. So I got in touch with Clifford from Firedog, and I have today Cliff on Skype. We're going to discuss how to rebrand Dr. Mix. Let's dive into it. Hey, Cliff. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Claudia.
Fantastic. Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Cape Town, sunny Cape Town in the tip of South Africa.
Wow. And how long have you been living there?
About 3 years now, after living in the UK for about 20.
All right. Fantastic. So I have made a little introduction to the public, explaining what this is about. I think I want to try and give as much value as possible, not only to myself, but to everyone who's watching right now. First thing, why is branding important, not only for companies, but also for artists?
I think the first reason why branding is so important really is to give you that little edge over the competition. I think, when you're getting into a space where you have many different options for the buyer to consume or for somebody to select from, branding always gives you that little sort of subconscious edge over the competition. I think that's pretty vital when you've got like a lot of different options to choose from. I think secondly, another reason why branding is important is like that moment after you've left that environment is to just kind of sit within your subconscious so that you have kind of better memory, better recall of that brand. For example, Marlboro cigarettes have this crazy little flag device that looks very arbitrary on the packets. But it's called a brand mnemonic, and the only reason why it exists, or one of the primary reasons it exists, is that you remember it when you see it like from 15 meters across the room. So, that's just one of the things is you're trying to kind of create an image in somebody's mind so that they have something to tap into when they're thinking of your brand.
Wow. So it's a very powerful tool, in other words.
Well, sometimes it gets into the territories of dark arts, doing some kind of level of subconscious programming, attempting to lodge this idea in somebody's mind. And they're not even consciously judging the image that you're putting forward. Something is going on, and there's a lot of theory into the use of color, use of typography in terms of like how we react subconsciously to a brand or an image.
Right. So when you see something like, for example, Prince's logo or maybe Aphex Twin logo, there is a lot of thought that goes into it, I take it.
Yes, and I mean the Aphex Twin example is really good because what he is able to do with that symbol is he's like, for example, the Cyro album, I believe he put a bunch of blimps all over London with just the actual Aphex Twin symbol. So he was actually able to tease in the public, you're able to build that commitment and that fan following without even mentioning a name, just from actually having a symbol kind of up in the sky on a blimp, or doing some kind of like, it becomes really cool in terms of merchandising, in terms of like putting a symbol out there and, somebody actually recognizing it. And it's not actually spelling out a word, but it's just a brand association. It's like an image that somebody kind of like identifies with. And it goes all the way back to, the ages of tribalism, when you had like, standards on shields, when you had two medieval armies on the other side of the field. You had branding on the shield so that you could understand who you fought for, and all that kind of stuff. So it comes from a very long line of identity, really.
Wow. So it's like ancestral. It taps into our reptilian brains, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But listen, and I, obviously I cannot wait for us to get in the nitty-gritty of making Dr. Mix look like something substantial. And but maybe just to give another piece of perspective, what would you say are the most critical aspects of branding, whether that's somebody who wants to be a musician, somebody who wants to be an artist, or somebody who wants to run a business in this specific sector?
It's quite interesting because I think there's two parts to the story. The one is like the business corporate side, which is like in your case is much more the mix and mastering part of the business versus the online persona. If I start with that, really it's kind of at the most basic level, it's about shifting units. So whether that's selling product or selling ideas or whatever the case may be, intellectual property, for lack of a better of a term. And I think in that case, really what you're trying to do is you're comforting someone and you're minimizing friction. So I think the part where brands fail is when they create a disconnect between the purchaser and the kind of environment in which they're placed. There's a kind of point of friction and they kind of disconnect with the brand. So I think in terms of like just the overall corporate proposition, business proposition in terms of what you're trying to do with your branding is you're trying to like warm to somebody and not disconnect. I think when it comes to the music side and a bit more of the artistry and the creativity, I think what you're trying to do with the branding is, and I'll come back to the Aphex Twin because you like Aphex Twin, I like Aphex Twin, and I think he's a really good example as a branded musician. But I think, again, coming back to his brand, the way he portrays himself is you get a very good understanding of the type of music that he produces. There's a sci-fi edge to his branding that feels like it's come from another planet. It's like this kind of mutant intergalactic symbol that comes across, and you get that from his music, right? His crazy synth patches and all kinds of
mutant
stuff.
Intergalactic symbol. That's the name of my new album. Sorry.
Yeah.
True.
So I think and I think if you're a blues artist, you want to kind of get that warm guitar vibe coming across in your branding. Metal bands, such a good example of branding. Metallica with its heavy, spiky typography. Album covers like Ride the Lightning, where they've got an electric chair and like shock stuff going on, across to even the death metal, black metal bands have all got this like really angry kind of branding. So I think in a music environment, what you're trying to do is convey your values as both an artist or a music professional, you're conveying them in a kind of a subconscious way through typography, language, and iconography, so that like when the person is looking at you, there's a kind of a connection, like, oh, let me hear it out. I mean, at the base level, an artist, I guess you're looking at cover art on Spotify, and you're like, oh, I identify with this. Let me see what this artist's songs sound like, and you hit play, you know? But if you got, for example, if you're into blues and rock and you go to a blues playlist, but you see a metal cover, what are you going to do? You're going to be like, this isn't me. And you're going to disconnect from that whole experience. You're going to switch off and go somewhere else. I think that's where music and mood is conveyed in branding.
So it's much about content as it is about context, I take it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and style. Style is big, because obviously when you're conveying art, it's much more about the less of what you say. It's how you kind of paint yourself, if you know what I mean. It's it's not as hardworking and fundamental as like corporate branding, where you've got like key messages. Art and like music can sometimes just be an image. What springs to mind immediately is Pink Floyd's album covers. I can't remember the one, but you got the two guys shaking hands in the Hollywood studios, and the one's on fire. I mean, it just screams Pink Floyd.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That album is crazy.
Another good example, Claudia, is Depeche Mode have had a very long-standing relationship with a famous designer. I can't recall his name, but it's just interesting how they have leveraged design and music together in that kind of long-term relationship. And he's basically become their creative director. Everything from concert gigs to environments to album covers to t-shirts to merchandising. They have a kind of a unified brand kind of look and feel.
Definitely. Anytime I think of them, I visualize that blue cover with the red digits, and and that sort of high contrast blue versus red, and that sort of high tech feel, because of course they've got that electronic synthesizer, drum machine kind of thing. Dude, I'm so stoked. I can't wait to get into it and see what you come up with.
Claudia, I'm so looking forward to helping you too in this journey. It's always fun to do something, and I think music is very close to my heart, and it's actually it's going to be fun doing something where it's like a sideline and a hobby for me.
What do you play?
I play bass guitar, and I also produce a bit here and there, and I also play keyboards, but I profess I'm nowhere near as eloquent musically as yourself.
Cool, man. The important thing is that you keep on making music. You know that.
Absolutely.
All right, so where do we start from?
So I'm going to go through the same inputs as what I normally do. But I think the outcome is what I'm going to build for you is a strategic framework. And basically what that means is that we're going to get your branding in terms of mood and tone, what you stand for, and all that kind of material. We're going to get that down into some level of writing. I'm going to make some notes and what have you. And then that basically forms the brief going forward, so that when we're doing the creativity, we know what we're working about. So I've got a couple of exercises, and I am basically going to just fire some questions at you, and you're going to talk, really, and we're going to work it out.
Cool.
Okay,
cool.
Let's go. The first one to talk about is the idea of values. So these are kind of keywords in how the Dr. Mix brand should be represented. So I want you to just quickly jot down 3 top words that you believe that the Dr. Mix brand should stand for. And I think it's important to choose words that are unique and also ones that aren't really that expected. So you don't want to be going for something that is like quality, because no one's going to go out there with a brand that says, oh no, we're bad quality. So it's quite good to choose a word which is definitive in terms that has no real negative antonym, and an antonym is at the other side of something. So instead of saying good, you might just say, edgy, or something that is a little bit more descriptive and personal about yourself.
Let's see. Definitely the first thing that comes to mind is creativity.
Okay.
And I would say technology.
Okay.
Craft, method. Also, I would say tradition. As a music producer, I came to appreciate how this thing play out in what I do. And I think that this is just something that stays consistent.
Yeah, okay. So you've broken the rules a little bit. You've gone with 4 values instead of 3.
And sorry.
No, it's cool. It's all right. That's the creativity part, right?
Check the best ones. You can leave out the one that you don't like.
No, they're all good. So you've got creativity, technology, craft, and tradition. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's just dive into these a little bit. We'll spend just a minute on each. Just express for me a sentence that describes your choice. So for creativity, I want you to tell me, first of all, how it's part of your culture. And then I guess the second part, so we're going to talk from within and then we're going to look at without. So first of all, it's going to be like, it's part of me and this is why it matters to somebody else. So I want you to say, I'm creative, or my proposition is creative because of this of myself, and this is how it identifies with the end user.
Just because obviously music is a creative process, but it also gets misinterpreted because creativity is something that you keep present at every corner of the music creation. So even if you're mixing, mixing itself is a performance, right? And people tend to forget that. If you have a good creative attitude whilst mixing, then that gesture will become interesting. I mean, if I should expand on it in any significant way, I would say make something interesting happen in that room and then document it with microphones and with computers and stuff like that. Never losing track of the fact that you are a creator and that you want to say something for better, for good. It's at least it's you.
Yeah.
The best you that you can be.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And then the next one is just technology. Why are you so keen on technology? And obviously I kind of guess how it matters to the end user, but I'd love to hear it from yourself.
Yeah, it is fundamental to the process of recording music. I mean, if you think about it at its most basic level, what you do is you turn a piece of technology that can freeze time.
Yeah, awesome,
right?
Man.
If I take a recorder and I go to a kindergarten, listening to that, I am thrown into that specific moment. Or I take this very same recorder in a war zone and the feeling is completely different. So the fact that as in photography, as in video, as in recording, you are using tech to freeze time, and that you can never forget because you have to master technology in order to get good results. It doesn't have to influence you in any other form than just the pure knowledge, but you have to know what you're doing.
But there's a little romantic edge to it when you started talking about freezing a moment in time. I mean, that's like, so technology is not just pure about fundamental kind of stuff. It's like you can use it to tell a bit of a story.
I don't know if you ever had that experience of being a kid and coming across a recorder and then you record and you go da 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 do 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 do. You go back and you play it. You go, I just said that. That's me from 1 minute ago.
Yeah, totally.
Listen to that, right? So that's what gets people, because they close their eyes and all of a sudden they are in a different time, in a different space, even if that was just 1 minute ago. That's what I see amazing about tech, and that's why I dig deeper into it.
Okay, awesome. It's interesting, but craft and tradition, I'm almost drawing a line between them and say there is a little bit of an overlap between those two terms. But in terms of, do you want to just start with craft and just explain in terms of the Dr. Mix proposition where the craft comes in?
If you look at every corner of the music creation process, whether that may be, composition, you start with a fragment of melody and then you develop it and then you change key and then there is harmony, there is a structure and then there is orchestration. So each one of these aspects is a precise craft. It's a precise technique that I haven't invented. I just made mine. So the idea of tradition, the way I see it, you cannot really create anything meaningful if you haven't studied the work of the greats that have come before you. This idea that man, you just have to be creative, just record whatever you feel. Yeah, that may work. Probably if you're Miles Davis, but for the rest of us, and make no mistakes, all the greats knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah. So from a musical standpoint, from a technical standpoint, from a recording standpoint, the tradition and what people have done before you is something that you should never overlook, in my submission.
Okay, and that's where the tradition folds into the craft, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Is that like people have, whether they're working on the latest Korg or the oldest kind of tambourine, there's a kind of a sense of craft that comes through through the process.
This little moment comes to my head right now. I was 18 and I got my first full-time job in a recording studio as a computer programmer. I was playing the piano, but the owner of the studio really had it, so I wasn't allowed to play the piano. And the first time I played, and I was playing already kind of all right. And then he stopped me and he said, "Why are you rushing? Why are you rushing?" He wasn't subtle about this. He was shouting at me. He said, "You have to breathe, man. You have to nail the click. Don't rush it." That thing made me understand, dude, I better raise up to this challenge if I want to really make it, because don't forget, there was no Pro Tools and editing and auto-tune. That was straight to tape. If you could record, you could record. If you couldn't,
good luck.
Good luck. In that respect, I had a baptism of fire, and he taught me how to respect the people who have done this before me and better than me.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Claudia, those are the values, and they kind of form the backbone of the culture and the mood about the brand in terms of the way that we build it out. Okay. So the next exercise is, this is quite fun because I want you to be a bit creative here, but really this next exercise is called Articulation of Mission. And I think a mission from a branding point of view is like your day-to-day offering and purpose. Why do you exist? And what I want you to do in this exercise is I want you to think of a really cool and simple way to explain your offer to someone outside of the music industry, okay, without necessarily any sector experience. So it might be they could have some experience, but maybe they're a young band, maybe they know nothing about mixing and mastering. I just want you to come up with a really cool, creative way and express in a short sentence what you do. Right.
Obviously, I have, with a mixing, mastering, and production service, I obviously serve, I should say, me and my team, because it's a team of 5, including me. So we have all kinds of artists, from the bedroom artist, YouTuber, to Sony Music Brazil, maybe remixing a Javan track. So it's really, really varied, restoring recordings from Chet Baker. So it's really a wide spectrum. And that's on the service side. And I'm a YouTuber and a video maker, content maker. So there is this sort of duality. But I think if there is a way to explain how that works in my head anyway, is with my content, I try to inspire people like myself to become the best artist they can be. And with my service and digital products and the courses and all of that, I help them get there.
Okay. I think I'd mentioned at one point when we were chatting earlier that I really think that the Dr. Mix brand should mesh together both the mixing, mastering proposition, your sample packs, your online persona. So I think it's a really good idea, like you have done, to kind of see it as one persona. And I think what you were saying there is just inspiring people to be the best musicians they can be, whether it's in the mixing process or if it's watching a new demo video on a new piece of gear.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, I have my case study of one because I like what I like and I get inspired by what I get inspired. But when I watch somebody playing or somebody working on their craft and making a nice video, man, I just want to start playing immediately. And if I can't get there, then I like to study. So I think it's like giving on one side the input to do it, and on the other the tools to achieve it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that's really helpful.
Good.
I'm gonna come on to, we're gonna do a little bit of history here. I want you to explain the doctor thing. Like, you've obviously incorporated doctor into your branding, and Claudio in the studio versus Claudio in front of a camera. If we just imagine those two personas, so what is the doctor, where did that come from, and how does it apply to both?
I think that art and life have in science a really infallible ally.
Okay.
You know, when it matters, you go to a doctor, don't you?
Yeah,
right?
For
you
sure.
You know what I mean? So a doctor is somebody who deploys method, data, reason, and deploys the work of his or her predecessors to improve lives and save lives. So I see myself as using the same principles to art and creativity.
And obviously, you know, like a doctor's got many years of experience. You're not getting any younger. You've been on the scene for a long time. So you bring all that credibility and knowledge to the equation.
Exactly. So I use methods and techniques developed by professionals who came before me, as I said earlier, studying the craft indeed and trying to be objective so that I can improve art and save fellow artists.
Yeah. And I imagine if somebody comes to you with their precious baby, which is a half-finished track, and they say, you know, help me produce it, like a doctor, you're there kind of as a mentor, as not necessarily telling them what to do, but just, you know, in terms of what's best for the track and their outputs.
Absolutely, because you know, the moment of inspiration, and I'm sure you can identify with this quite a bit. You know, there are some moments where you are creating and you get that inspiration and you go boom, 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 boom. This is the idea. Let me write it down. Let me draw it. Let me record it. Let me do that. And then pretty much you get in the trap of judging it and perfecting it in a way that's majority of time just messing it up. Because your moment of creation is gone. And it's like the paralysis from analysis stage that you really want to avoid. And that's why at that stage I deploy the doctor. I deploy technique. I deploy objectivity. So is this objectively bad or objectively good? I will worry about that. Let's try and make it sound better for now, applying those techniques that have worked last time I used them.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Perfect. Okay, so the next exercise here is in branding, it's really helpful to have a unique positioning and a point of difference. So this is actually not really doing anything exactly new above the mission and the values that we've already talked about. But I want you to just think about a couple of notes and points about what makes Dr. Mix different to the other competitors in the music environment. Now, obviously, there are two primary kind of audiences again, because you've got, I guess, your mixers and your producers and your mastering suites and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously you've got your online thing. So you can either do them together or you can separate them and say, you know, in terms of my point of difference over this type of audience, I think I offer this.
I mean, obviously the brand is intrinsically linked to who I am. And I think that, you know, through my unique experience in the music game, I was somehow able to make myself successful enough to get to the next album anyway. During that process, I kind of codified methods and techniques that work for real artists in the real world of today. And I've taught those methods to my team. And together with my team, we have improved on those techniques and those methods. Conversely, I feel that online services that are out there come from traditional studios who are struggling whilst coping with the challenges of a changed music business. You know, the 80s are over. Or maybe our services from struggling musicians who try to paint themselves as successful with the goal of getting out of their struggle and charging other struggling musicians, which I think, kudos, you know, you gotta make a living and, you know, kudos to you. But I think the stuff that I have learned worked for me and worked clearly for so many others. I mean, I've got enough work for an entire team and to maintain expensive studios in central London. So it's a story of growing, not a story of oh, I've got this $1 million facility, I better find some work online because people can't afford real studios anymore. So that's I think what's the main difference between my proposition and many of, I mean, of course I'm generalizing here, but I see that happen quite a bit.
And you're talking about the other competition in that case being kind of other online providers of your types of services?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about competition, I don't really believe in competition because I think that the internet is so big that there is space for everybody. And also, internet is constantly growing. But, I mean, there is a reason why I have done things the way I have done it. And I like to think that, if I'm able to stand here and speak to you about the subjects is because the things that I've learned actually work.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. The next little exercise here really is the, I call it characterization and personification. So I think this is going to lean a little bit into the Doctor thing again. But the question is, if you imagine Dr. Mix as a famous person, who would they be? Which human characteristics in your imaginary person translate into the Dr. Mix brand? And how does this person become memorable? And you can also, you can feel free to combine characters. You can make a Frankenstein here. Like you could take the helmets of dark punk and mix it with the legs of Billie Jean, anything like that. Just think of give me a couple of famous people and you say, Dr. Mix is like this character because of this reason. Even if it's just famous musicians' moments in time that you kind of identify with and you say Dr. Mix, as a person, I really identified with this moment, this album release, this production effort, this outside recording space that was chosen, just anything that is a cultural moment in time that is wow, that is so Dr. Mix, because it just basically, from a branding perspective, what that does is it allows us to draw parallel lines between epic moments and your own kind of portrayal of the brand.
I think this is, this goes artistic very quickly because one of my main inspirations is probably Quincy Jones.
Okay.
And Quincy Jones embodies for me the capacity of working with different styles, from the really deep soundtrack to pop with MJ. He's the embodiment of the eclectic producer. So I aspire to be somebody like him. I wouldn't say that Dr. Mix is something like Quincy Jones, but I definitely try my best to go down that route. So about being super professional, having a plan, bringing home the result, which, Quincy is so famous for. And, sometimes without even composing anything, but just being like a MC, like a matador, you deploy a major 7 chord, but also you deploy a great graphic designer, but also you deploy a talented musician, that percussion solo, I press that button right now. So I'm going to have Paulinho da Costa playing this very thing at this very moment because that's what we need right now. So that.
Do you know what that immediately makes me think of is the conductor in front of an orchestra, right? I mean, all he has in his arsenal is this tiny little white stick, but he's making everything happen in terms of obviously those people in the audience can read sheet music. They've practiced enough. They should know when things happen, but the final moment in time and the timing is down to his little flick of the wrist, right?
100%. And that's also what the conductor represents in that very moment. You look him up whilst you're playing, and maybe you, soloist, you had a 64 bars pause. And you've just counted them and you just want to make sure that you are getting in, and maybe you're not exactly sure. Then you look at the conductor and he's looking straight at your eyes going, it's now, baby. Awesome. And even if player would have gotten it right anyway, but the certainty of having somebody who knows it for sure makes me feel, okay, I can really go for it now.
And I guess that coming onto that certainty is that's when your audience, your young bands, young music makers come into you. They kind of want somebody who's just certain about things. They like working in an environment which is so random in terms of the creative environment, what, which synth to use or what sound to use here, how to pan it or whatever the case may be. They just need a certain guiding hand that kind of knows
Absolutely. Absolutely, because another thing that happens with music is that you record this thing and then you play it back and you add some elements to it. By the time you heard it like 10 times, you're in love with it.
Yeah.
It's your baby. You listen to it, and you lose perspective. So a pair of fresh ears of somebody you trust is the reason why producers exist.
Yeah. Awesome.
Even if they're not playing one instrument, but they're just there to keep you in track.
It's like a Sherpa. Sherpa is the guy that takes the dude up the mountain,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just got a couple of exercises here left, Claudio. So the first one really is the audience. So the audience is the people that engage with your brand. And rather than outline them, let's talk about what unifies them under one world, one microscope, one environment. What makes a Dr. Mix audience?
I think, you always end up attracting people that are like you, in a way. Mm-hmm. You must be, to whatever extent, a bit of a music nerd, meaning that you are willing to dig deep into it, and no matter how complicated it gets, you're still gonna do it. And I'm really surprised to see sometimes how young my audience is, because I always assumed, I'm getting to the end of my 40s now, and I always thought, maybe this old-fashioned synthesizer thing, it's something that is just for people of my age. It's not. My bet is that people will always want to make music. People will always have the dream, whether it's just vacuous or, because I want to look good and be loved, or whether it's like a genuine love for the craft, for harmony and stuff. I don't think that is going to die anytime soon. So the audience is possibly people who love music enough to really get deeper into it, even if some others may think it's boring. So geeks, in a way.
Cool. Yeah, you have to be a bit of a geek to understand this, specifically stuff like synthesizers, right? They're not easy in terms of theory to understand. I imagine you can make a terrible sound with the synthesizer.
Yeah, the synthesizer is just as good as your musical taste.
Yeah.
It's like language, and you can dominate language. I can learn German if I really put my head to it. Does that make me a poet? Maybe not. Maybe I have to go an extra mile in order to get there. So knowing synthesizers and music production is the craft, but what you say with it is the art.
Wow. Okay. I'll write that down.
I'm unstoppable today. Man, this is fun.
This might be your new tagline, hey? It works. Okay, cool. So one final question, Claudio. Inspired brand. So it's really just helpful in terms of talking to you about other inspirational brands that you've seen out there. It could be a brand identity, it could be a logo, a video, gimmick, social media post, movie, experience, anything. What ticks your boxes in terms of the stuff out there in the world? It doesn't have to be current, it can be old, new, whichever.
I'm just gonna go completely random. I have watched a movie about the Helvetica typeface.
Okay, yeah.
And it shows the origins of it, how it came to be. It was commissioned, I think, by the Swiss government in order to have an official typeface for Switzerland. So the video shows old offset bits and bobs, these beautiful wooden boxes and stuff. And when I see craft to that level, I really get inspired, Clean graphics, something that makes a stand, something that is substantial, that you can trust.
Yeah.
And I think that there are companies who deliver that. BBC definitely feels like that.
Yeah.
In our space of musical instruments, pro audio, I think Native Instruments is doing a great job. They did this series where they took this machine, a groove box, and they brought it to independent producers in Colombia, and telling this story so organic, sometimes of poverty and this high technology, and how that mixes up together. I think they did an incredible job. When you get something that looks really contemporary and it's there to serve tradition and art in the most authentic way, brands that do that impress me.
That's really good advice, actually. Well, that's it, Claudia. That's all the stuff I need to know.
Look, I know that, I probably gave you quite a bit of information at this point, and I'm sure you will have to let it marinate in your mind. And, if the moment that you feel inspired, and if you have a camera and you're taking a sketch or you're doing anything, I would love to see that happen. And maybe we'll feature it on the next episode of this venture of ours.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it, Claudia. It's going to be
fantastic. Fantastic.
Cool.
Thank you so much for your time, guys. I really invite you to subscribe to this channel. By the way, I have also a special mailing list that you can subscribe to, so that YouTube algorithm or not, you're going to get notified when I release the video. So you can hit that. And I can't wait to see where the Dr. Mix brand is going. And I will see you next time. In the meantime, you can watch this video. This one.